Hey everybody, welcome back to the cabin. It's the morning of October 2nd today and fall's finally arrived. Had 0 degrees Celsius, which is 32 degrees Fahrenheit overnight. It's going to be quite a warm day today though, up to above 20 degrees Celsius, so perfect working conditions. Turned out to be another warm day today. Looking forward to it cooling down. It's supposed to get down to 8 degrees. So it ended up being a full day just getting that one roof section done, which surprised me how long it took. Good thing is I'm not in too much of a hurry because I think I'm well on schedule to get everything weather tight before winter comes. 7:15, I guess. What sun went down at just before 7 o'clock. So I'm just gonna get my steak on the go. Dishes need to be sterilized, so I'm gonna boil some water up here. Pour them over the dishes. Get the steak on the grill. And I'm not even sure if I have the energy to make the onions and potatoes. I might just leave those for breakfast tomorrow morning. Go with my eggs and female bacon. You know, I started telling my story about the lost business and the financial hardships and all that stuff, and you guys have been so amazing sharing your stories and inspiring me. And I feel kind of obligated to keep telling the story, which I'm more than happy to do. I'm happy to get that off my chest. It's pretty therapeutic to share, and I'm thinking you guys are thinking the same thing by the comments that you're giving me and the stories that you're telling me in the comment section. I think that's amazing that everybody's opening up and sharing their stories. And one thing I noticed, if you go through the comments, I'm surprised, and I'm happily surprised at how many people are actually going and liking other people's comments. So many heartfelt stories, and people are reading those, not just myself. And like I said last week, I'm literally reading every single comment. It's amazing the stories, amazing the hardships, and what you guys have been going through yourselves, and really puts my problems in perspective. I think I said in one of the previous videos that I hadn't seen any raccoons up here ever. And they found the camp. I left the utensils out here by the fire over the last few days, and they've been moved around. So the raccoons are around now. So I'm sterilizing these dishes right now. So I've got the frying pan on the fire. Just filled it with water. I'll get a kettle boiled too, so that I can do the same thing after dinner. Then I can put the steak on. Late night. First time ever up here, I think I remember to bring a fork. And I also found this in my camping kit. The steak is just reminding me of how we made healthy food a priority and how we were able to source food cheaply, but also the effort we put into it. To learn more about homesteading and more about self-reliance, we really took control of our food. I'll have to remember to tell that story next week when I have more time to get into it in more detail. Well, this steak looks like probably a little more cooked than I usually have. That's medium rare. I usually have rare. Yeah, it's a little overcooked. That piece is probably perfect. That piece is probably perfect there. It's so clear with no humidity at this time of year, the moon's lighting up the whole forest. Temperature's dropping really, really fast. It's actually getting cold already. Guess so. Good morning. Hard time sleeping with that full moon shining in here half the night. Literally, because that's facing south. The moon was shining right in here. This was lit up like daylight. Morning like this, after a restless night and a long hard day of working, it's hard to get up in the morning, which is not typical for me. It kind of ties into what I wanted to talk about this week, and that's inertia. Inertia is the tendency for an object to remain in its current state of motion, which means if it's still, it wants to stay still, and if it's in motion, it wants to stay in motion. That applies to a lot of times in somebody's life, in one's life. It's awfully easy to get lazy, get complacent. You
get in the habit of just sitting around the house and not getting out and getting into nature and getting out there and doing things. It's hard to, it gets harder and harder to get up and actually do them. You get up each morning and you're thinking, I want to do this or that, and then you start off the day slow, and then before you know it, you're saying, I'm not going to bother doing that today. I'll just stay home, do nothing, and I'll do that tomorrow. That's inertia. That's the tendency to stay still. It's a real life killer. It's a real happiness and success killer, really, when you think about it. Because how good do you feel at the end of the day if it was the day you planned on starting that diet or starting that exercise program or starting that business or just making a small step to change your life, and you put that off, and then at the end of the day you're looking back and you're just disappointed in yourself. And all it would have taken is really that first step out the door. That first step is the hardest, but it's so important. And a lot of times it doesn't matter if you're taking that step in the right direction, as long as you take it. Doesn't matter what direction you're headed in. As long as you're moving, you get inertia working for you instead of against you. Get moving, you start pursuing that goal, you take a step in the direction, and if you find that even after 10 steps you're going in the wrong direction, you just alter your course. But if you didn't take that step at all, then there's no course to alter. I've been in that position lots of times in my life. Even this past summer, actually, I think even while building this cabin, there was days that I should have done more work on it, and I got doing something else and got caught up in that and ended up not getting enough done here. Typically, I'm up around 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning, but this summer I was sleeping until about 6, and I found over the years that's probably one of the best habits I've gotten into that have helped me in my career, helped me in my life in general, helped me be successful, was that getting up in the morning and getting going early gave me an advantage. I often got more done by 8 o'clock in the morning than a lot of people get done in a day. Mind is clear, no interruptions, and it's just such a peaceful time of day too. 7 o'clock in the morning here, it's quiet, and you can hear the birds starting to get up and the animals starting to move around. I'm going to make a bigger breakfast than I normally because I need the energy today, but often when I'm on an outdoor trip where I'm doing a lot of traveling, or if I'm working on the cabin, I like to just have oatmeal or something quick so I can just get fueled up and get going. But it's so peaceful up here. Longer breakfast by the fire would do me some good. So I'm going to get up and do that now. I'm thinking about building a cabin as far as fires are concerned. There's lots of wood shavings around. Nice little thin shavings for tinder. Makes getting a fire started easy. Should be lots of calories in this. You can see what I was talking about before about the 4-inch thick roof, 2 layers of 2-inch boards. So these are 2x6s. I've got 3 nails into the top course of the logs, 3 at the peak, and then this gets nailed to that, so basically laminated to the bottom course, and then they overlap, they switch back and forth at the top, at the peak. So basically the 2x6s are kind of self-supporting. Even if that ridge beam wasn't there, they'd still stand. So the ridge beam is holding weight, or can hold weight, because it's spanning from solid to solid supports. But I think this just adds that extra support, extra strength, and with this steep pitch, I don't anticipate there being a lot of snow load on the roof at all. But if you look at just one board, there is some give to it. But as soon as I laminate that second one to it, there's zero give. Like, it is extremely solid, and it's actually watertight right now. So I've got a 3-inch lap. Basically the joint here is in the center of this 2x6. So I have a 3-inch lap on either side of that joint. So any rain that falls, most of it's going to run right out. Some could get in, and if snow was sitting on there, it would get in. But that brings me to the next point, and my next question for you guys. I mentioned last week about this project getting a little out of hand and the cabin getting much bigger than I originally had planned on building. And especially the roof section I'm finding, and I knew this was going to be the case. Because I wanted this loft, I raised the walls another foot, and then I put a steeper pitch. So you can see I've got a 45-degree pitch here. The problem with that is now I'm not comfortable climbing on it to roof it. I'm either going to have to build like a full scaffold system, which I'm really not that fond of doing, or I need to switch my roof type to metal. Is the only thing I can think of. Either metal or a plank, sort of a plank roof. I don't know if I've ever seen that done. I might have seen it in an old log cabin book that I have. I'll have to check that out to see if it's sort of a legitimate way. But I'd be doing sort of like board and batten. I'd have to put a layer of waterproof paper, like tar paper, roofing paper, lapped all the way up, which provides the underwater proofing. And then over top of that, I'd nail 1-inch boards, maybe 10 inches wide, with a batten on top. I think it would look awesome. It's a lot more wood, but it's actually cheaper than metal, which is the other option. Now, what I had planned, and still possible, I could still do this, and that's to shingle it with cedar shingles. My friend Terry, who let me cut all those trees down for the next cabin on his property, all the logs you see around that I'm going to start hewing soon for the next cabin, he let me cut those down. Well, he has a bunch of cedars on his property as well, and he actually cuts them down, and he's going to give me the 16-inch or 18-inch blocks that I can cut shingles out of. I started splitting a bunch maybe 3-4 months ago from some cedars from the property. So I'm going to build a cabin for sure with those cedar shingles. I'm going to roof one of the cabins. But the question is, do I do it on this one, or do I shingle the next cabin with the cedar and build a little bit lower slope and lower end walls so that I could actually do it safely? I don't know. I've got mixed opinions about it. I really would prefer to do cedar and do all natural material. On the other hand, I want to get this done, and I want to get it done safely. Anyway, I'm rambling on again. Need to get to work. So I think that's it for this video, for the building portion anyway. If you want to stay tuned to my self-reflections at the end of the video, you might enjoy that as well. Or if you're interested in what I'm doing every day, you can go to Facebook or Instagram, and I actually post daily updates there as well as some inspirational, motivational quotes and pictures and stuff that my wife and I take. So I appreciate you guys watching and tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you up here at the cabin next week. Take care and have a great week. So when I lost the business at the end of 2010, I felt like I also lost part of my identity. You know, I started to reflect on what happened and why I got into that position. And yes, there were some corrupt employees, and I do want to get into that in more detail and talk about just human nature and why I didn't really hold a grudge against those people. So the tendency just to withdraw and get depressed and kind of quit, give up was strong. And inertia was starting to take over. I'd get up in the mornings after I had no employees to go into to see off to work and no customers to talk to, and just a real change, I guess. I was going to say low point, but more of a change than even a low point. It was just not what I was used to. There was no reason to get up early in the morning. I mean, the things I had to deal with most were creditors and lawyers and judges and collection companies and that kind of fun stuff. Of course, there was my family to consider. So I hung my head down and called up one of my competitors to see if he had any positions open. But sure enough, when I called him, he was actually excited at the opportunity and hired me. Now, this guy was known as not a nice guy. He's just a mean, selfish guy, and it was the last guy I wanted to work for, but I knew it was the best opportunity to get a job in the same field and making a decent enough wage that I could support my family and possibly start paying off the debt. So I did that. I took that job in March, so 3 months after the business failed. So there I was, giving up, rather than working on the businesses that I still had in my pocket that I could have expanded, I could have put more time and effort into. I just gave up, and inertia took over, and I settled back and just went to a job every day, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with going to a job, but for me, unfortunately, I had this huge debt, so that was not going to suffice. That was not going to be enough to pay off that debt and provide a future for my family, because the problem with that debt is there's no way I was paying it with regular wages, which meant that was always going to be looming over my head. So I can never build up assets for my children. I can never have a home to pass down to them. I would leave my wife in the same position, so it really wasn't a solution. It really wasn't a good long-term solution, let's put it that way. I couldn't just have that job. My personality, my tendency is not greed. It's simplicity, it's giving. I typically give up too much in some people's minds of myself and of my resources, my money, my time. And that period where I was building that business, I just got greedy. So I paid for it, and that beat myself up a little bit, I guess, after losing the business for ever getting into that position, and swore I'd never do that again. I'd never let greed take over, and I'd be satisfied with what I had and satisfied with a simpler life. So that's, of course, this is the result of that many years later as I got back on my feet. Anyway, rambling, I'm getting all over the place here. It's such a long story and there's so much to it, and if you're new to this, you don't know what the heck I'm talking about. This week in particular, inertia seemed to be stuck in my mind, and the tendency just to stay doing whatever you're currently doing, and the importance of taking that first step in the right direction, or taking the first step in any direction and then adjusting to make sure it's the right direction down the road. That's what I had to do when I took that job. That was a step in a direction, and I don't regret doing that for a minute. I lasted from March till I think August of that year, so 5 months I worked for this fellow, and I appreciated the opportunity with him and I appreciated the income, but I knew if I got complacent, if I just stayed there, I was never going to pay that debt off, and I was going to leave a legacy of debt to my family. So I had taken that first step, but then I decided to take some second and third steps and change my direction and revisit the businesses that I'd started before. So I started doing some analysis, and there's a term called paralysis of analysis, and what it is, if you analyze something so long that you don't take those first steps, you don't take action on them, because it never seems like the perfect time, the perfect moment to take that step, then there's awful lot of lost opportunities in life, and maybe it's happiness that you've lost. Paralysis of analysis is something that could have paralyzed me right then and there, because when I looked at the business again, I looked at the potential and looked at the immediate payback, there was some risk there again, but it also looked potentially big enough to pay off my debts and pay them off fairly quickly. If I had let that tendency to stay still take hold of me, I'd still be $750,000 in debt, maybe more with interest. But I'm not. And here it is Tuesday morning, and I'm making breakfast on an open fire by the cabin. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. And I'll never make that mistake again. I'll never let greed take over. I'll never let ego take control of my life. And I'll remember the priorities. I'll remember that family is priority, and that does not mean the ability to buy them whatever they want. That means the time. That means having the time to spend with them. It means being able to pass down something like this, sort of a legacy of hard work and appreciation for simpler things in life. That's the legacy I want to leave. I don't want to leave hordes of money. And that was a lesson I learned, and I'm very, very grateful to have learned that. Well, that's how I feel this morning. Finish this breakfast up and get back working on the cabin. Feeling a little bit run down. You've noticed I'm wearing a brace on my arm. You know, everything I do, I just put everything into it, and I don't start up slowly. And of course, I jumped into this cabin build in the spring and just went physically at it without taking my time warming up to it, I guess, and it did a little bit of damage to my arm. So, tennis elbow. I'm wearing that brace that's helping out, but that was a lot of hammering yesterday, nailing boards onto the roof, so I'm not sure how much of that I can do today. I might have to adjust what I'm doing a little bit. Anytime I'm feeling a little bit of pain in my arm or feeling overwhelmed by the project, I read your stories, and I can't imagine slowing down or giving up at any point after hearing what you guys have been going through and what you have overcome in your lives. So thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video up here at the cabin.